Hello everybody, it's Verda here, and today we're going to be benchmarking the GTX 1060 3GB edition graphics card with the Intel Core i7-4790K with 16GB of DDR3 1600MHz RAM inside of GTA 5 in 2024. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and jump on in and see what the performance is like. Alright, so to get us started here, we're going to be playing at 1080p using the highest settings in the game. Besides MSAA, we might try MSAA later. This has a huge performance impact, and honestly, I wouldn't recommend playing with it. You usually don't need it on. But yeah, we're using maximum, so let's go through these real quick. As you can see, I've set everything to the highest that they can go to. There's one other setting that I've got turned off, which is in-game depth of field effects. I don't like depth of field effects, so I'm going to turn that off completely. Everything else, though, is at the highest settings, as you can see. And advanced graphics, they're probably going to be left off for the entire benchmark here with this setup, because the performance impact that these settings have is quite high, and you don't really get much for it. So we'll probably leave these off as well. So you could say not true absolute maximum settings, but advanced graphics not really needed. So with that, let's jump on in and see what the performance is like. As you can see here at 1080p, using pretty much maximum settings in the game, we are CPU bound in GTA 5 at about 70 to 75 FPS in the main city area here. I am going to go ahead and take us up to a more graphically intensive area, which is where all the grass is essentially, once I figure out how to get there. But even though we are CPU bound right now at pretty much maximum 1080p, it's still well within the range of playability for GTA 5. Anything above 60 FPS for GTA 5 is going to be completely fine for most people. You can honestly get away with playing GTA at like mid-50s, mid-40s in the FPS range for a lot of the gameplay, especially if you're just driving around. The frame time graph is really smooth. As long as you don't get any like huge stutters and stuff, then I think it should be completely fine. The game looks amazing. And since we are CPU bound, it does mean that we can actually turn up some of the settings. So you could turn up MSAA if you wanted to, or you could go ahead and turn on some of the advanced graphics if you really wanted to. But for most people, this is going to be completely fine. In terms of RAM usage, we're not even at 10 gigs, so 16 gigs is still more than enough for GTA 5. Obviously, this game came out quite a while ago, but still, it's not like these parts are very new. In terms of VRAM usage, 3 gigs is still enough here for GTA, at least at the settings that we're using. But as you can see, the CPU really is being pushed here in GTA. It's at like 60-70% usage a lot of the time in the city, almost at 80% usage there. If you set an FPS cap of like 65 or something, it's going to be a lot smoother, right? It's going to be a lot nicer. Here in the grasslands, we're actually, or in the mountains or whatever you want to call it, we're actually getting a bit more FPS. Well, we were. Please don't blow up. Oh my god. But it's because there's not as many people around here, so the CPU doesn't need to work as hard. So we're actually able to get more FPS since there's a lot less vehicles and people. So the CPU doesn't have to strain as hard. But the GPU absolutely does. As you can see, our FPS has dropped back down to around 60, 70, near the grass. But it's still completely fine. We are GPU bound up here, which is to be expected. The grass is really intensive, guys. So if you want more FPS in an area like this, all you need to do is turn your grass down a little bit, and you didn't hear that, and you'll have better FPS when you're in the mountains or in the grass. But even still, it's completely fine here. It's absolutely completely fine. Like, we were at what, 60, 65 FPS? I didn't personally see it drop down below that. Maybe it did, but it feels fine to play here in this area with these settings. So yeah, GTA 5 completely fine with this rig, so at 1080p at least with these settings. So let's try, for whatever reason, if you play at 1440p, let's go ahead and give it a go on these settings. Alright, so now we're testing 1440p using maximum settings once again. No MSAA yet. Maybe we'll try it at 1440p, not sure. But everything else is at maximum, other than depth of field is turned off, because ugly setting, I don't use it. Advanced settings are of course turned off as well, so let's see the performance. Alright, so it seems like at 1440p, using these settings, we are actually going to be CPU bound. Pretty much most of the time. As you can see, it's fluctuating a little bit, but it pretty much is CPU or GPU bound, sorry. Whereas at 1080p using these settings, we did have a little bit of headroom left over a lot of the time. It was only when we went up into the mountains that we actually started to see more of a GPU bottleneck. And that's simply because there was less cars and less people, so the CPU just had an easier time. And then obviously the grass is way more intensive in this game, so the fact that there were less people, less cars, less for the CPU to do essentially, and more grass meant there was more for the GPU to do, meant we were getting GPU bottlenecked. But here in the city, we are fully GPU bound, pretty much, at around 60 FPS on average. We're dropping here to like 50s, but that might be because we're pretty close to the mountains, which means the grass is starting to render in a lot more, right? There's a lot of grass up here on these hills. And also our VRAM is still at 2.8, 2.9 gigs, so creeping up there. Let's get up into this hill slash mountain. I'm sure we're gonna drop into the mid 40s at least. Oof, low 40s, high 30s. Still, I think pretty decent, because realistically the amount of time that you spend in the mountains is probably not going to be that much. And if you ever want to come here, just turn your grass down a little bit. That's all you have to do, is turn your grass down. Now I do want to quickly mention, you guys won't be able to hear this, but I have the PC that I'm playing on right now right beside me, and it is loud. The model of GPU that I have is a single fan model, so in order to keep these temps, it has to really work. So no doubt my GPU right now is at 100% fan load, and I can tell it's loud. Now if I was playing in a game and I had like closed back headphones, probably wouldn't bother me, you probably would not be able to hear it, but I play with open back headphones. Not something that's like too important to the benchmark, but I do want to note that it is a loud GPU, the one that I have, but it's a single fan one, so it's going to be the case. We're at about 40 FPS here up in the mountains at 1440p, which I'm not even going to say is bad. I'm actually going to say that's really good, considering we're at 1440p with an 8-year-old GPU, playing at pretty much maximum settings without MSAA and stuff. I think this is perfectly acceptable, and it doesn't feel bad. That's the thing, it's still smooth. Frame time grass, still smooth. I've seen absolutely zero stutters. I actually saw more stutters with my Ryzen 7 7800X3D and RTX 3060 Ti, and that's simply because the FPS was higher. It seems like in GTA 5, if your FPS is too high, it starts stuttering, and I'm not talking about hitting the FPS cap of 187, I think. I'm talking like if you start to get above 100 FPS and stuff, you start to have a lot worse stability in this game. You really do start to get like random stutters and stuff, even before hitting the FPS cap. But yeah, up in the mountains, 1440p, 40 FPS roughly. But down in the city, like if I actually drive away from the mountains and we get... I'm a terrible driver, guys, don't mind me. I actually don't play this game that much anymore. As you can see in the cities, about 50 FPS, it would seem. At least here. It's gonna vary depending on where you are in the game. Quite a lot. I just had the fire alarm go off, so I just had to like literally wait for the fire alarm to turn off. Yeah, there's cooking going on in the house right now. Something smoky's cooking and it set the alarms off in the house. But yeah, like here we're actually getting just under 60 FPS, so it's completely fine in my opinion to play like this. It's really nice to see that you can, if you want to play GTA, you can just pick up a 1060 and just play this game completely fine. But let's try the next preset. Alright, so now we're at 1080p. We're using maximum settings still, but this time we're going to use 2 times MSAA, so the game should look a little bit sharper and stuff. So I'm just going to quickly show you that we are still at the highest settings in the game. And no, we're not using advanced graphics. We're probably not going to use them at all. So yeah, let's see what this is like. Alrighty, and as you can see, I crashed my car instantly. No, but as you can see, with 2 times MSAA, we are pretty much GPU bound a lot of the time. Sometimes the CPU usage or the GPU usage is dropping and it's not being fully utilized here in the city, because it is quite demanding to actually fly through the city like this. Like the CPU has a lot of stuff it has to do, you know, when you're driving through the city this fast. Oh god, I say this fast as I crash and you know, drive through pretty slow. But I'm gonna try and go through the city as fast as I can. It really pushes the CPU basically to its maximum that it can actually do here, if I drive through as quick as I can without crashing. And no, it seems like it's still doing a really good job of utilizing the GPU. Did just drop GPU usage there, but for the most part, with 2 times MSAA, we are GPU bound in the cities, and we're getting an average of around 70, 75 FPS, which is respectable for sure. And also, that frame time graph is quite smooth. Like, I'm not feeling any stutters, any micro stutters or anything like that. Game feels great. You know, basically it feels like you want it to feel. Like when you're playing a game, you don't want to be noticing your FPS. You don't want to be noticing your performance. You just want to play the game, right? If I didn't have an FPS counter right now, I'd be completely fine with this. And it's no surprise because we are at like 70 plus FPS a lot of the time here. But we're going to make our way over to the mountainous area because, as we all know, I keep saying it, the grass, very intensive. Yeah, it is. I keep saying it because it is. Come on now, Deborah. Is that necessary? Don't you dare call me that, Deborah. She was about to call me something very unmonetization friendly. Oh god, man, my driving is just horrendous, isn't it? Oh man, I've finally arrived at the mountainous area. Jeez, and I instantly crashed. But yeah, it literally took me a couple of minutes to get here because I didn't know how to get here. I'm not even kidding. But yeah, as you can see, the CPU usage has dropped, or it is dropping. We're not really at the most intensive area of the mountains because I missed the area where I should go. So let me get down there. All right, my driving is going very well. Very good. There we go. We're finally here. Just actually, I got a micro stutter there, guys. First micro stutter, or first FPS drop rather. But yeah, the FPS here up in the mountains, it is pushing a little bit. We're at 50s. Still completely fine for an area like this. 50 FPS. Yeah. It's nearly at 60. This is actually fine. Yeah, it doesn't get much more intensive than this in the game, essentially, for the GPU. In terms of locations, like, this is... It's not as intensive here, of course, because there's not as much grass. But yeah, about 50 FPS you'll drop down to, it seems like, at 1080p up in the mountains. But yeah, that's going to do it for 1080p 2x MSAA ultra settings. It's still completely playable, guys, and it's still completely fine, as I was expecting it was going to be. Let's try another one. Let's try 4x. Alright guys, so now we're at 1080p, we're still at maximum settings, but now we're going to be testing MSAA at 4x. But just to quickly show you that everything is still on at maximum settings, let me just quickly go through, and you guys can take a quick look. You can pause, feel free, and advanced graphics, like always, are turned off. Let's see what it's like. So already you can see that the FPS is actually a little bit lower than what it was previously at ×2 MSAA, of course, but it's actually still more than fine. It's still more than playable here. We're still at above 60 FPS. It's very nice to see that you can play like this. I wouldn't recommend going above 4x, and I don't think I'm going to test above 4x, considering that we're barely, you know, just above 60 FPS here. Even though I do say that GTA is playable at 45 and, you know, 50 FPS ranges. If you can help it, just play it above 60, right? Especially if it comes down to whether or not you use MSAA at 2 or 4x, or even off, you know, compared to 8x. In my opinion, it's just not worth turning the MSAA up to 8x or even 4x and sacrificing the FPS. You might as well just keep the FPS and just not use that level of MSAA, or any at all, if you can't afford it, right? If you've got a less powerful GPU. So yeah, it's diminishing returns, essentially. Unless you've got a lot of performance or a lot of FPS to spare, then just don't use it, essentially. But yeah, in the city here, I am making my way to the mountains, but in the city here, you can see that we are like at 65, sometimes nearly 70 FPS. It is dropping now because we're getting into the mountain area. Oh, it's right here, which has all of the bushes and all of the grass, which GPUs do not like, essentially. Low 40s, still fine. I just crashed my car. Why did I think that was a small bush? I don't know. But yeah, low 40s, mid 30s there. Jeez. Oh god. Not ideal. But if you're just going to be here for a mission, or you're... Oh, I missed the rabbits. Can I get a like for that? Just kidding, guys. But yeah, if you're just going to be here for a mission, or you're just going to be here briefly to drive past it or something, I don't think it's terrible. If you spend a lot of time, you know, in the mountains for whatever reason, or getting cop chases in the mountains, then yeah, you're probably going to want to lower your settings. And with that, I think that's going to do it for today's video. GTA 5 is more than playable at 1080p, as you can see. Even with MSAA set so high on 4x, at 1080p it's completely fine. For 1440p, you can play at ultra without MSAA, completely fine. If you do want a little bit more FPS, you can go in and manually turn some of the settings down a little bit. And, you know, if you are going to use this for 1440p, which I think is definitely going to be the minority of people. Most people with this card are going to be playing at 1080p. But yeah, just do know that you can play at 1440p completely fine above 60 FPS if you're willing just to turn down a couple of the settings a little bit. So don't be worried about that. And yes, this CPU is more than adequate enough for GTA still in 2024, so that's quite nice to see. And yeah, hopefully you found this video helpful. If you did, go ahead and leave me a like, subscribe if you haven't already. I'm going to keep crashing my car because I don't know how to drive. And until next time, guys, take care of yourselves and don't crash your car like this. And I'll see you next time. Goodbye for now, guys.